Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another exciting review. It's been a tiring but rewarding day for us here at Manly Battleships, but Mr. Panda and Roxstar are here to talk to you today about Netflix's redub of Neon Genesis Evangelion, Death True 2, and the end of Evangelion. A lot of people have said a lot of things about this new release. People are unhappy with it. Some people are okay with it. A very small group of people are more pleased with this than the old ADV version / manga entertainment because rights issues with Evangelion is really weird and complicated and
convoluted.
Like the release history of Death. Anyway, that's beside the point. We can highlight the good parts right off the bat. What were the roles that you found best in the new dub?
I actually like Masada, which I think I've heard is a kind of a controversial opinion, but I like Masada. I think the most controversial opinion I have is I really like Shinji. I don't understand why everybody had a problem about who voiced him, but I don't think it matters so much who voices him and what gender they may or may not be.
We're not going to make that an issue anyway.
Fine.
I thought it was really interesting because you homed in on the two that stood out most to me as well. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know whether or not I like new Masada over old Masada. They're both bringing a slightly different characterization to a lot of the portions where, you kind of have to form an idea of who the character is. Shinji, for me, is a little bit more clear-cut because it's like, now, I actually much prefer the new voice of Shinji for a couple different reasons, not least of which is just endless screaming. God damn it.
Well, that's just Shinji's character there, though. I really prefer Shinji's new voice actor. You know who else I kind of liked? Kaji. I actually kind of liked I don't know what it was about what the voice actor did in that booth, but he set this very carefree tone to Kaji that I actually think was very needed to balance off of his I'm serious, super secret spy in the background.
Mm-hmm. Gendo was decent as well. Once we get off of that path, though, we start entering a spectrum of that's okay to terrible.
Well, see, I think mine is just that's okay. I don't have somebody that I felt was terrible.
Every background character in episode 1?
No.
No, they were kind of bad.
The only thing I could complain that has anything to do with background was the cicadas.
Yeah, but that's just a thing in Evangelion.
No, it just, they felt louder than the original. It felt like they really wanted you to know the cicadas were back.
I mean, 5.1 sound. Woo!
Okay, yeah, well, blame it on my stereo system.
I mean, yes, that is kind of the idea. When you set up those new tracks, everything gets a little bit louder, and never mind, it's not important. Sound tech. Someone else mentioned that they kind of homed in on it. Felt like sound for the movie was mixed differently, and in a way that wasn't always pleasing to the ear. It wasn't just the cicadas, it was some of the effects. The way that a lot of old shows, when they get redone, sometimes when music gets us to a certain pump level, it's hard to hear what people are saying. I've been told that happened once or twice, though I don't remember seeing it myself. That's usually something that affects much older shows that used to be on mono. Evangelion was always stereo, so it shouldn't be that big of a deal, cicadas or not.
I swear that's the only big major issue, other than some pronunciation. But we're getting
to pronunciations.
We're getting
there. I promise.
I found mostly fine. Like, I had no big issues with this dub, no big issues with the sound mixing, except for the damn cicadas. Other than that, I actually enjoyed the new dub. I think the talent that they got was fine.
And it was a good excuse to rewatch all of Evangelion, which is probably, if you had it on your shelf, has probably been sitting there for 10 years because you bought it and never bothered to rewatch it. There was a really fun discussion on Twitter recently. They went around and were like, okay, so who else bought Eva 3.0 and never unwrapped it? Most people, as it turns out. I feel like the Evangelion, that's kind of show. I think people needed an excuse to rewatch it, and love it or hate it, there was your excuse. You had a really good reason to just sit down, banging it all out, including, oh my gosh, I don't want to get on that whole subject of Death True too. So let's just skip that for a second and move on to the next issue. Pronunciation. It's like no one can figure out how they want to say words. Like zile.
Or sile.
And what's more is that wouldn't necessarily be the problem, except that I don't understand why they went with their attempt at the German pronunciation in the first place. Yeah, it's a German word. Do you know how many loan words we borrow and then just start pronouncing how we want? Gyro comes to mind.
Well, honestly, I wouldn't have cared as long as they chose one. It kind of felt like either I think it was just the dubbing company never sat down with the actors and said, "This is how we're saying Sile." Everyone's saying it this way.
Oh no, I'm sure that they had that meeting. It's just no one knew what they were doing in the voice. Zile. Well, I mean, like, and in fairness, the whole German pronunciation angle on S's, I had an extensive conversation with my sister about this, who teaches German. Yeah, it's more like a Z. However, sometimes you give it a little harder on the is, depending on where you're from. But so what? These are all Japanese individuals, except for Asuka. By the way, oh my word. Could they not get Ahsoka to try a little harder on a German accent?
You know what?
Oh God!
Let me just say something.
Weird.
It bothers me when people keep pointing out she's German. She should speak German. She should have more of a German accent. My problem with that is I'm bilingual too, and I may have a little bit of an accent, but I don't just go around with my friends and start blathering out random Spanish words that you guys don't understand, like fucking ole all the time or something.
She says ole a lot. No, she's lying.
Okay, yeah, sure. And I don't feel like I speak in a very authentic Mexican accent.
When you speak Spanish, you sound like you're Spanish.
Yes, when I speak Spanish. But
Guten Morgen! It sounds like Will Ferrell in The Producers.
I can't comment on that. I don't know. I don't have the ear for it. It was fine for me, but I'm not German. You can have that opinion. I was just talking more in general of real bilingual people don't just start sprinkling words of their language into the English. It just doesn't work that way.
I mean, it was slightly better than the Japanese take on German, but you know, we skipped past that years ago. We've just gotten over it.
A real bilingual person might go, I forget the word for this, and say the word in their native language. But I don't think people actually go around sprinkling their native language around with English. It's not a topping, okay? Our languages are not toppings. We're not going around making sure we have pineapple over here and chocolate over there.
Genocidio.
Except for him, but he's just weird.
Genocidio.
And totally not bilingual.
That's what Evangelion's all about.
I've heard other problems with Nerve being one of the other ones, but I don't know.
I didn't hear it that much from it.
If there was a difference, it was so slight, my ears didn't catch it. That one didn't bother me as much. There were other little things that bothered me when I watched the original series, like there's this, I don't want to spoil too much if you haven't watched it, and if you haven't watched it, what are you sitting here doing, listening to us review the entire dub? Because I don't think we're doing spoiler-free here. I
mean, so far we've done pretty good, but I mean, like, at this point, if you're watching a review discussing the differences in the dubs, presumably you've seen the old one at this point. So, I'm not gonna, like, hold you hard and fast to that rule, but we don't have to go into a lot of it.
No, well, I was just people will know what I'm talking about. That confrontation between Rey and Shinji where they talk about why they pilot the Avas, and she kind of gives this this farewell that's very final. In the show, it didn't feel so final as it did in the original dub. But then, if you go to Death True,
which is the same scene,
translated the way the original had it. So I'm very confused as to how that was translated.
Yeah, and I mean, there's an ongoing controversy about the nature of certain aspects of the translation itself, not just the dub. We'll get to that maybe in a minute. I'm trying to think here. I feel like there was certain inconsistencies about I believe people use the term stilted when it comes to the dialogue, especially early on. And I feel like that's a fair assessment. It feels like people were still feeling out their characters when they were doing those early episodes. I see a similar phenomenon with one of the shows up here, Van Dread. Like the first episode or two, lines feel slightly more awkward than later on. And I think that's just something about getting into the habit of your character. I don't know.
I didn't hear it. There's a lot of... I was on Twitter for a really long time looking at all these complaints, and I'm like, I didn't hear that. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh no, a blast!
I didn't hear that.
Okay, fine. That's just
hear...
me then.
No, it's you and apparently a million other people. Apparently my ears just suck. Because I didn't hear a lot of the complaints.
Which brings us to the Flashpoints. Well, let's use this as a bridge to get to that Flashpoint. Were there any scenes specifically, other than the one you already just discussed, that you felt was superior in one version over another? Like in how it was executed by the voice actors. I mean, there's a lot of iconic scenes we could dive into there.
Like the sex scene?
Well, there's that. And honestly...
The infamous moment where every weeb looked at their parents when they were watching Ava in the same room as them and went, ah.
And I mean, like, admittedly, like, there's an element of Masada's new voice actress that I really, really like. But when we got to the sex scene, the infamous off-screen sex scene, I remembered why I liked the original Masada's voice so much. There's an element to her character that really comes out in the more... Not just the sex scene, I'm saying this literally, the intimate scenes between her and Kaji. Mm-hmm. And they just are communicated in a slightly different way that I really always enjoyed. Those were one of my favorite aspects of the old ADV dub.
Well, yeah. I mean, I brought it up for a reason. Masada's my favorite character, so therefore I would have a major opinion on this. I actually like the new Masada in her intimate moments with Kaji in this one, because I kind of feel she gave it a different flavor than the old Masada did. Not that I don't like the old one. I really love the old dub, because obviously it's iconic and all that stuff, but I really liked how it was done in the new one.
I think I figured out. Like, speaking, when I said earlier about stiltedness, in the first couple episodes, I felt like Masada's voice, sort of the old dub, didn't feel as natural or as good. Because I went back and I rewatched it for the original. Then when I got to the later scenes between her and Kaji, like I said, I think I know what it is about that I want to tap into. There is a certain girlishness about Masato's original English voice actress that is not present with it. I'll call it an almost sultry element to the new Masada voice.
And I think I'm the one who prefers the sultry.
But here's the thing. That's why I noticed that seems to fit her a lot better early on, because that's the character that she is. But the reason why old Masada works out so well in certain scenes is because when Masada is with Kaji, it's taking her back. That's the phrase I'm looking for. I don't have a better term for it. It's taking her back. Because their entire relationship took place years ago, basically when they were college students. And that, like, he was almost like that whole, like, substitute father figure for a time there. And I think that's why when they're together, what she loves about him, what their entire relationship is founded upon, is all buried in that aspect of her that she's started losing as she got older. The girlishness aspect to her. So when they're together, when they're flirting, when they're in bed together, all of those elements that the old Masada voice is communicating in general comes out really well. Am I explaining this correctly? I feel like I am.
I mean, you are, but I still prefer the new one.
I don't know.
Because I feel like...
I mean, we certainly spend a lot more time without that, especially once you get to a certain point. It's like, well, no more of that. Moving on. So that's fine. I'm just saying, I don't discount the old Masado, unlike some of the other voices where I'm just like, that's whatever. Moving on. Next, new people can come in. That's fine.
Speaking about intimate voices, in the Death Reach Who, the intimate voices for Ahsoka and Rey, that's where I actually felt the stiltedness. Like, they didn't feel comfortable in putting their characters in that sexualized position.
Wanna be with me? Wanna be with me? Wanna be with me? Actually, I don't remember what the line is. Who cares? Shinji-kun, I love you. I would date with you. Shinji-kun, I love you. I would date with you.
I mean, that's what that scene feels like. But that's where that felt stilted, whereas Masada still shines through there for me.
Yeah. Other comparison points? Iconic scenes that aren't the sex scene?
Should we bring up Karu?
Well, we have to transition to that at some point. So
we might as well do it
I can't
now.
think of any other big scene that I want to talk about. Nope. So Kaoru.
I'm just a little salty about everybody on Twitter complaining about how the most iconic gay couple was been erased. They were never a couple, guys. Just because you ship them, and this is not me shitting on it, by all means, they're a great ship if that's what you want to keep it. But Kaoru is.
You guys are getting way too hung up on Kaoru, interdimensional stalker.
He never gets with Shinji. There are multiple universes where Kaoru and Shinji could totally happen, and they don't. Which tells me Shinji's not interested, and therefore there was never anything to erase.
I mean, it really is almost that simple. We, for years, have marketed a bunch of theories related to the Evangelion franchise as a whole that underline just how interesting and yet non-romantic the both ways relationship is between Shinji and Kaoru. The other thing you have to keep in mind, based on what we've been told from a couple people who actually know a lot more about Japanese than we do, is, strictly speaking, the new translation is, in fact, more accurate.
No, because love was only stated from Kaoru to Shinji, never the reverse. So therefore, there was never a couple to begin with.
No. I'm not disputing that. You're forgetting that people are arguing that it's erasure specifically on behalf of Kaoru's line. That's where a lot of people are focusing in.
It still exists. If you follow the theory of what actually happens in Eva, technically the romance can never be erased because every timeline exists in which he tells Shinji he loves him. So, I mean, for me, you can't erase something in which timelines are canonical, do exist, and he has told Shinji he loves him.
Also, shove it, Crunchyroll. We got there first.
Don't get me started, because I read a lot of manga to get that stuff correct. So, I guess that's why I'm slightly biased, is I've read a lot of the iterations with Kaoru, and yeah, he loves him, but there's never a clear indication that they were a couple, and that Shinji wanted to be with him.
Get over it, guys. It's been unrequited for quite some time.
And for the people who say that this is them making them into cousins, stop. That's not even said in the anime. Don't make this into Sailor Moon. One thing is to say instead of love. A whole other thing is to replace the dub and make them cousin.
I mean, it wouldn't hurt if they were cousins. This is America.
No, well, people are just trying to have their Sailor Moon moment, and it's bothersome because, honestly, the problem with the Sailor Moon thing is they were clearly not cousins. So you were telling us something way different back in the day.
We are getting off task here. The point is, we don't care. Calm down. There's plenty of other things to complain about. This is a good time to remind everyone that we put out a great fan parody video on YouTube. You should check it out. Neon Cicada Evangelion. See, your cicadas got covered. And you cicadas need to shut up. What other aspects we can talk about here, if any? We established that it's worth watching. It gives you an excuse to rewatch all of the Evangelion series that's available.
And to remind you of Anno's brilliance of having his brilliant scenes.
Well, if you want, you can share your new idea about the live-action scenes in the Eva series before we close here.
It's a continuation off of the theories that every iteration of Eva out there is a part of the time loop, which if you go look in the media, there is a lot out there. I kind of hold this theory that the live action scenes at both the end of Eva and the actual end of the series is the final iteration and the true goal of all these timeline loops, is to find a world where the Evas no longer exist.
Where no one has to pilot the Eva. Which is exactly what they talked about earlier in the series.
And where no one has any idea about any impacts or anything like it. This is our reality. Our reality we're living right now is the final reality. And I feel like this is canon. Like this, we are living in Ava. Because this is the final loop. That's it. There's nothing more. This is the goal.
And this one, Crunchyroll didn't talk about. Screw you. Also, you think about it now. I've talked about this before with how, like, Ava influences other media, and I've always personally felt like other anime know what Anna's doing, kind of, and just roll with that and be like, this is actually commentary on Evangelion. So, like, remember when we talked about Endless 8 from Haruhi Suzumiya? Like, being an industry in-joke, being like, yeah, Anna, we know what you're doing. And then now I'm thinking, it's like, I wonder if Madoka Magica was the same way, because it's like, yep, that's how we do it. That's why we get back to the real world.
No, and they do have that manga series where it's just, oh my god, it's just Homura reliving everything over and over and over again.
Alright, I think we've said everything we can about Ava today. Good night.
Bye-bye. Congratulations, Shinji!
God damn it.